And unfortunately, ladies and gentlemen, here we are again with an actual school shooting. And, right now we have an officer describing the event, so we're going to go right to him and we're going to see what he has to say.
Center at the 13,300 block of Highway 6, where parents could reunite with their students. And additional information will be forthcoming. Right now it's very limited. We're just one of the agencies that responded out here to offer support, and so that's what we have out here. There's multiple fatalities. It could be anywhere between 8 to 10, the majority being students. One male is in custody, and then a second one, again, was a person of interest. Both are believed to be students here at the school, and that's what we have at this moment. And this happened a little bit before 8 o'clock this morning.
Sheriff, about the type of weapons?
We don't know that yet. We're searching the entire school, and it's an active crime scene. So all the details about specific injuries and firearms evidence will come later.
What time did he get access to the school?
I don't know the exact time, but it's my understanding it happened right before school started. So I would guess it happened anywhere between 7:30 and 8. It's my understanding. I don't have the exact time.
How old is the shooter? How old is he?
Just that he was a student here at the high school, so I would imagine in his teens.
He's a current student?
Algo en español, por favor.
Sí, estamos aquí en la escuela de Santa Fe High School. Tenemos confirmado que varias personas.
All right, so what do we have right now? If you call it the tail end of that, and, I'm very new to the situation, just like everybody else is. It seems that 8 to 10 dead. The report that this is a shotgun, and that there are 2 people in custody, at least a person of interest and a shooter. All of this has been pretty forthcoming, and I've only listened to 1 or 2 witness accounts. In a moment, we're going to go back to the officer as he's answering questions. All this stuff is fresh, but they're saying a shotgun. This is not being blamed on an AR-15, and as I've said before, there is a mental illness problem in this country, and I'm not going to direct this one way or the other. People are innocent until proven guilty. But this appears to be somebody right before school. The fire alarm went off, and by most accounts, people were told to run and get out of the school. One girl said it did sound close, like it could have been inside and outside at the same time. Again, 2 people have been detained. We're going to go back to this officer right now.
Office bomb unit, along with others, are searching for that as well. So we'll conduct an active search. I just came to give some preliminary information just because I know we hadn't come out yet. So as soon as we find out more, either myself or somebody else will come out here shortly.
Sheriff, any idea of where it actually happened, inside or outside?
That's a key question, where it actually happened, inside or outside, that he did not answer. Sheriff Ed Gonzalez from Harris County speaking there, giving us...
All right, so that's Ed Gonzalez, and he's the sheriff, and he said that there are multiple people on the scene. Again, Fox is reporting 8 dead. We're going to go check them out right now, see if we can bring them in. This again, is just a tragedy. And it's so upsetting that again and again and again we have to see this. And, guys, I'm getting as much information as you are. If you got questions, you're watching on YouTube, you're watching on Twitter. I'm going to be looking at those on Facebook as well. This one seems extremely sad. And I don't like talking about dead kids. I don't know anybody that does. And this is truly a problem. The president, just before we went live on the air, obviously condemned these acts, but apparently he has diplomats from other countries coming in, and this was a scheduled press conference, so he was getting to that, and it was cut off. We're going to go to the Fox News scene and see what they're reporting right now.
What you can do in the event of an active shooting, but to prevent it, mental health aside, you can't prevent kids from getting guns. They go hunting. I mean, it's going to happen. So then what do you do on the school campus to do better to protect these kids?
But as a parent, once again, your child is leaving for school, I mean, know where those weapons are in the house,
Right.
I mean, there's a lot of states that have, like you said, for hunting and for everything else, but fine. Well, where is he, how is he taking this gun to school?
Yeah.
Are the parents aware of this, or he snuck it out? He could have hid it in the bushes and took it that morning. You don't know. And with the shot,
Well, yeah,
there's different rounds that could go in it. There's a slug, and then there's the 00 buck, and then there's the bird shot. And the bird shot being the least of it all, but as the doctor said, the spread pattern on them, if you're getting up close, you're doing damage with any one of them, but mostly with the slugs will do the most damage. But with a bird shot, you're that close, you can do a lot of damage. And how many rounds are in there? I mean, he wounded a lot. I mean, they have the.
And again, they're saying he, so it seems to be a male subject, but at the same time, oh man, with a shotgun, like you said, say there's 2 people, 8 to 10 dead. There are some get off 6 rounds easy. A shotgun, and like you said, with birdshot or separate kinds of rounds, it's towards the end of the year. I wouldn't be surprised if this ends up being a senior. Again, I'm speculating a lot here, but so far, I haven't heard any evidence, for instance, that there was a active shooter drill. In fact, there was a mother on the phone, and apparently they had some kind of a scare 2 weeks ago, but it ended up being, kids calling something in and firecrackers in the hallway. That's the one report I've heard of any kind of an incident like this one. And the mother was still a little bit irate. Of course, she was relieved that her daughter had gotten in. Let's see what we have right here. So we do have a male gunman arrested.
Preservation of life, Joe, is going through your mind. You have to get there quickly. You have to get there and eliminate the threat. Luckily, in this case, the threat was eliminated by arrest, but we all know it doesn't always end that way. So first response, first thought is to eliminate the threat and get everyone to safety. And also look to see if there's any other active shooters, if there's any devices that may have been left behind. You don't really know what's going on in these situations until you get there, until you actually can control it.
And again, when you get there, the thinking has changed since the days of the Columbine shooting. It used to be that authorities would set up a perimeter. Now the idea is to go in charging and try and stop the shooter wherever you can find him.
That's right, Joe. If you have at least 3 officers there on the scene, you don't want to wait for SWAT. You don't.
And I agree with that policy. Once again, this girl talked about being in first period. It sounds like, if this gunman was outside and inside, could have easily brought that into a school, and especially a shotgun. It's frightening, but again, a reality we have to live in. Again, if anybody else is getting any more information, reports, they have somebody some information that we need to turn to. I'm going to go check out the MSNBC feed right now. And let's see what they're reporting over there. Well, that one seems to be buffering.
So the gentleman we were listening
to. We're going to check another one, I guess. It's really not great to have to sit here and
minutes ago was Ed Gonzalez. He is the
dead kids. And that's the truth. Let's see if the BBC has anything to say about this right now, and they're not obsessing about the royal
main
wedding.
diamond.
No, only in America do we have to talk about these kind of shootings. It's very, very rough. Here we go. Let's see what CBS
He tells us that this is a multi-agency type of investigation that they're currently conducting down this way. He says that he can't tell us if there are more people that are injured or if there are more fatalities at this time. He says it's still just one of those things where they're searching and they're still looking for more evidence, more information. He does tell us that the second shooter, they also believe is a student here. So that first shooter that they have in custody, they say that he's a student here, but they said that the second suspect, is also likely a student. I'm going to send it back to you guys in the studio.
So there you
All right,
go.
Janelle,
Again, two
and
suspects.
do want to clarify that Sheriff Ed Gonzalez with Harris County did say it was between 8 and 10, the number of fatalities confirmed there on campus between both students and adults. 8 to 10 is the number they're working with right now.
Yeah, a minimum of 8, but maybe as high as 10. So we just want to make that clear. We don't know the details on the breakdown, how many students and how many faculty, but he did mention both as being among the dead at Santa Fe High School. If you're just joining us this morning, you may be wondering, what's going on and when this all started. And we've been on the air here now for almost 3 hours when first reports came in of an active shooter at Santa Fe High School down in Santa Fe ISD. This is Galveston County. And the calls coming in just after 7:30 this morning.
3
the
hours
first
ago that this
calls
started.
of somebody on campus.
Texas Central Time. Oh, man, it's not something, again, I like to get up here and talk about, especially, taking care of small kids myself. It's a big fear. But again, from these reports, from the ones that I'm hearing right now, and let's see if we have a witness over here in the Fox News one. We can get over here and watch some live coverage. It seemed like there was somebody talking about it, but it seems like they did the right thing.
And they're combing his social media. They're looking through his personal computer. They're looking through his phone. They are really doing a full court press to find out every possible connection that this individual has. And that's what's taking place right now.
It does speak volumes when you look at the number of casualties versus the number of fatalities. There are 3 casualties. There's one person under the age of 18, a police officer who was clipped, who basically saved the lives of many more students, and another adult in the hospital right now. Those are only 3 injuries that are being treated in the hospital. Now we're being told by the local sheriff that as many as 10 people may have been killed, which seems to me that he was at very close range when he started to open fire on these kids. As we mentioned earlier, his tactic was to pull the fire alarm, and the students are trained. As soon as you hear a fire alarm, you evacuate. You get out, usually in single file, but you get out of the classroom, and your objective is to get outside. And this student knew the drill. Does the drill need to change?
Well, we heard from a former law enforcement officer saying that we need to revisit exactly what we do with fire drills, not only in schools, but also in office buildings and other locations around the country. We do train.
We're going to go back to the CBS feed just for a moment. See what we got over here. It looks like they're in some kind of a courtroom or processing center over there. And that, I believe, is the Houston feed we got going on. Oh, man, so much going on right now. There we go. Let's jump over back to Fox.
What's happening right now?
The Vice President, Mike Pence, and the President, President Trump, have been briefed. Obviously, they are continuing to send out their outpouring of love and support. The Vice President basically saying, we are with you, you're in our prayers. I know you are in the prayers of the American people. And President Trump echoing those sentiments, and the First Lady as well, saying, my heart goes out to Santa Fe and all of Texas today. And the same goes for the rest of the country as we hear these horrific stories coming in, these children who were absolutely horrified between 7:30 and 8 o'clock this morning when they thought that they were in the midst of a fire drill, but instead they came face to face with an armed fellow student who's now in custody being questioned by police. Bob, thank you so much for talking to us. Is there any final word you want to add as far?
You know what I don't like? I don't like how they keep playing down this this second person in custody. They should be talking about why is there a second person in custody? Why are they a person of interest? Are they somebody that maybe this person talked to the night before? Did maybe he help him get the weapons in? Or do we have a second shooter? Again, this only witness that I've heard so far said shooting could have very well been going on outside and inside. And again, they're not playing the AR-15 card. No one's playing the AR-15 card. So if this is true, that we've got a shotgun, we've got 1, maybe 2 students that are responsible in custody, don't be surprised if this does not get the play in the media that something like Parkland does because of the AR-15 factor. And that's just the gruesome world we live in. You know, this is gut-wrenching. I don't want to watch this. Ugh, gross. So, you know, there's a couple of helicopters obviously going to be airlifting some of the injured out, but from what they're saying, there's only about 3 injured people. You know, and then 8 to 10 dead. Perhaps there's more. Let's see what we got going on over here.
Thanks very much for being with us today. Try to have a nice weekend.
Outnumbered starts now.
Fox News alert: school shooting in Texas. The sheriff says 8 to 10 people are dead in a shooting at Santa Fe High School outside Houston. Most of the dead are students. More victims fighting for their lives at a local hospital. We're expecting to get a briefing on that and be kept up to date on that just moments from now. 2 people are being detained in this, both also believed to be students. Here's how we believe it happened. Someone walked into an art class on this campus, and students described that person carrying a rifle or a shotgun in the classroom and opened fire. The dead, as I mentioned, are mostly students, but also in the hospital right now that we can tell you are 3 people. One of them is a police officer, the other is another adult, and one is under the age of 18. Those are the details that we have right now. The detainees, one was arrested pretty quickly, the other then detained moments later. The students, obviously now as we look at these pictures live from outside the Houston area and Santa Fe, Texas, spilled onto the campus lawn as they were evacuating and running for their lives, as you might imagine. The buses lined up there for the end of the school day. But now, of course, the purpose will be to get those students to a safe location and await off campus for parents to pick them up. Santa Fe, Texas, Sheriff's Department gave a briefing just a short time ago. And in that briefing, they talked about what it was like inside that school. I want to bring in our first guest now, Pat Brosnan, a former NYPD detective.
All right, so let's cut it there. That's about as comprehensive as it's gotten. I have not heard rifle other than that report. Again, I don't believe the sheriff talked about anything with the weapon. He said he wasn't ready to disclose that. You know, I'm seeing in the comments, end game to remove weapons from people's hands. Although that agenda to, you know, disarm the public has existed for a very, very long time among many societies, and incrementally this one as well in many cases. This has some hallmarks of the real deal. Now, that doesn't mean it could not be used. Again, I think it's going to be a tough sell to the American people that you're going to take away shotguns. You know what I'm saying? I really don't see that as something that's going to happen, but hey, man, you never know at this point, right? You really never know where this could possibly go. So we're going to, you know, keep our eye on this. Let's see. We got somebody talking about a social credit score. On marks. Well, you know what? That's a good point. You know, earlier today, I have this video, and I saw it. It's a leaked internal video about Google. Now, how am I going to intertwine this? Well, if you look at this, I mean, everything we're doing is being tracked, traced, and databased. Everything. And when you look at something like the Chinese social credit score and the fact that Google openly works with the Chinese, Apple openly working with the Chinese on all fronts, and you have journalists that have some tweets that they have to apologize to the government for. That's not bad enough. You see, that's not enough for them. Then you ban them from buying property. They can't travel on trains and planes. Their kids can't go to the best schools. Can you imagine not being able to buy property because you voiced an opinion on Twitter? Goes a little bit further than being disarmed and not being able to have guns, doesn't it? Think about that. So when somebody discusses that as a possibility that your social credit score may indeed limit the amount, I mean, take away your guns, and don't think that all the things that you've already done aren't being logged. They are. Go check out the video. It's over on the Facebook page. You can't miss it. Leaked internal Google video from 2016 shows Black Mirror is reality. And so, you know, at the end of the day, like I said, whether this is something more or, like the media is reporting, it seems to be 2 students that are being detained, one of which they're identifying at least as a shooter. They're not really talking about the second one. Eyewitness accounts say shotgun. News reports say possible rifle, but we're not talking AR-15. So let's go back to this coverage with Fox and see what we got going.
It's similar to some of the other, you know, very horrific shootings, to the extent that the shotgun, as you know, is a gruesome weapon. It has a spread pattern, devastating injuries, and has the capability of getting multiple victims with one discharge. So it's an extremely lethal and deadly weapon, and I think what you had is the scattershot approach. I would speculate, obviously very, very early for fact, but I would speculate based on that volume and the known time that elapsed, you know, and known at this time, that it was frantic and quick and scattershot within the confines of that art area.
All right. Pat, I'm joined on the couch today by Melissa Francis as we cover this breaking news.
Does it strike you, Pat, that, you know, witnesses described either a shotgun or a rifle? It's a pretty big weapon to bring into school undetected. I mean, what does that tell you?
Well, it tells me a couple things, Melissa. It tells me first that the school, and not assigning blame and not Monday morning quarterbacking, and it's way too premature to speculate with precision, but schools need someone at the entry point, at the points of ingress. They need someone there. Ideally, it should be.
So you know, this guy's making a great point, because that's probably how this went down. And you know what? With the idea that a shotgun or a rifle, perhaps we do have 2 shooters. One had a shotgun, one had a rifle. Again, you don't have a huge amount of injured. It seems like it's pretty surprising that they were able to take out these kids, however, without killing them. And they're not discussing any kind of injuries either. Man, that's tough. This one's a tough one. Again, it really, unfortunately, looks like, you know, the real deal. Maybe a couple of kids that weren't going to the prom in a month. I hate to put it that way, but, you know, people do bad things. And you see it all the time in the news. And I have somebody asking how a 16-year-old kid has a shotgun, a child have a shotgun. Well, again, these are high school kids. Maybe you didn't grow up in the country. Maybe you're, I don't know, detached from reality, because when I was a kid, you know, even younger in the Dutchess County region, which is, you know, 45 minutes an hour away from the city, you know, people hunted. But when I got up to upstate New York, where I am today, are you kidding me? 12, 13, 14, or, you know, we're out there with a 22, unsupervised in many cases, not even a thought. You know, firing shotguns with supervision, those type of things. Those things kick, by the way. You end up, wow, you better be ready. Have that right against your shoulder hard, man. But this is Texas, and you know, there is a gun culture there. There's certainly a hunting and a nature culture there. And I wouldn't be surprised if these students, if they both are shooters, are on some kind of mental health medication. There's a lot of that. And, you know, sometimes they don't go shoot up a school, by the way. They're the ones that end up, you know, killing their kids and their wife and their family. And that's just as scary, if not scarier, in my opinion. You know, again, you never want to see dead kids, but the idea that you think that you're helping your spouse or your husband by getting them on medication, right? And then all of a sudden, you don't wake up the next morning. You look at Phil Hartman as one of those cases. You know, the kids weren't killed in that one, but, you know, Phil Hartman was killed in his sleep, and his wife ended up committing suicide. So that happens a lot, and they never discuss, well, yeah, he was on 5 different psychotropic medications. And I've got, you know, I shot my first gun at like 5 years old, and that's something that does happen. You know, that's not like beyond. And the thing is that if you're properly taught firearms, first, that's step number 1, right? But you also have to be raised in a good environment. a healthy environment, one where you don't just, put your child off that you're not attentive to. And I think that's a huge issue in this country, that families have really fallen apart and people don't take responsibility for their children. I'm not trying to blame the parents here. We don't even know the situation, but like I said, this doesn't have any hallmarks so far as something that seems to be misrepresented. Let's put it that way. Let's go back to the CNN feed. Let's find that one and see what they have to say. See where this one's going.
And you said that there was a fire alarm pulled. Is that
Yes,
protocol? I'm guessing that your school, like many others, most across the country, has had drills. Is that what is supposed to happen
ma'am.
with an active
that
shooter?
That has never happened before. I don't know if it was something to get everybody into the hallways or if it was to alert, but because the shootings didn't start happening until after people were outside or in the hallways.
Meaning, just to clarify, your school has done drills before, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And what's the protocol there?
We had normally the police department comes onto the intercom, or somebody from the office will come on, and there's a code word that they say.
Mm-hmm. And so it sounds like, I mean, obviously we have to get more information. What you think might have happened is that the fire drill was pulled in order to get the kids out of the classrooms and potentially in the line of fire?
That is an assumption that I would make, but I can't confirm that, no.
So you are in a band, you were saying you're in the band, and your band director really helped. Talk about how that went down.
Yes, ma'am. So a few months ago, we had a school shooting scare where there were threats made and then firecrackers were lit off to simulate gunshots. And it was not an actual shooting, but because of it and Parkland, we began to do school shooting drills. And my band director is ex-military. So he's very, very calm, cool, collected. Here's where we're going to go. This is how we're going to sit. Nothing bad's going to happen because, we have that cement room above our band hall, and it has a steel door. And he stayed up there, kept us very, very calm. He gave us he had a puzzle for them to do to keep them, the kids occupied. While they just kind of listened to see what was going on.
And Grace, you're the band chaplain?
Yes, ma'am.
So I understand that you led your friends and classmates in a prayer as you were...
Yes, ma'am.
Tell me about that scene.
We were hearing gunshots, and many kids were having panic attacks. So... I'm a senior, I'm about to graduate, but I'm still chaplain, so I was going to have a prayer circle, and we sat in a circle and we prayed for all of our peers that they were going to be all right, and we prayed for whoever was doing this, that something changes in them, that even though they're doing something wrong, like, we pray for them. And I think ultimately it just made everybody better.
Grace, I have to say, you're 18 years old. You are in the midst of something that no person, never mind a go through, and the fact.
Oh boy! So here we go. Once again, we have the talk of the firecrackers from a couple weeks back, and they said they were kind of doing drills. So they were supposed to have a code word, and that doesn't seem to be, again, what happened here. That didn't go over the speaker. However, that's totally separate from what happened in Parkland, by the way. So, man, this is just awful. And, it's heartbreaking to hear, Kid talking about getting into a prayer circle and praying for, everybody to be all right. Oh, gross. Gross. I do not like. Oh, so here we got another eyewitness. Let's go back to this.
Whoever did this is really selfish and cold-hearted. These are innocent people at our school.
If you would have heard what I heard this morning, the fear in my loved one's voice because of my son being in that classroom.
Really scary. Really, really scary.
It was very scary. My brother was in the classroom when it happened. We're still trying to get contact with him.
Nobody should have to go through this. Nobody should feel that pain. It hurts my heart to see this.
Hurts everybody's heart. I want to report that the Texas governor, Greg Abbott, is on his way.
So again, I'm looking for, I just heard somebody say that their brother was in the classroom. So far have not seen any first-hand eyewitness accounts of seeing the shooter or being in said classroom. Again, we have reports early morning, happened 3.5 hours ago at this point. Shotgun, possible rifle, one shooter, 2 people in custody. Just awful. Just, again, very, very tough to sit down and watch. And really, again, I don't enjoy talking about dead children. I don't know anybody that does. Let's go to this separate feed and see what we got going on, if there's any new information. But again, gut-wrenching, guys. Taking questions in the comments. What do we got over here on Twitter? Let's see. This is all planned. It's all fabricated, orchestrated. The shooter was probably known to the police as well. I look at everything with discernment. If any of that evidence comes about, we'll definitely report on it, but so far I haven't seen it.
From witnesses that the gunman went into the school carrying a shotgun, but the law enforcement authorities have not confirmed that. However, they do confirm that someone is in custody and another person has been detained for questioning, and both of those people are males and they are both believed to be students. So we still don't know exactly how it unfolded, where students were. We know it was the beginning of their classes for today, but we still don't know exactly where the shooting took place inside that enormously large school there in Texas. I should point out, Richard, before I send it back to you, that tomorrow is this school's high school graduation. So this all happened the day before really the end of school here in Santa Fe, Texas. Richard.
What can one say, Bryn? Thank you. When you have more details, please come back immediately to us so we can...
And, that's the European feed, and I'm seeing people saying to me, are you watching CNN for the talking points? Certainly I'm watching CNN for the talking points. Again, I try to look at all different forms of quote-unquote mainstream media, see what they're reporting. Watch for the raw news footage first, because I want eyewitness accounts, and you're going to get that from different factions and whatnot. But at the same time, again... you want to see what they're talking about so you can kind of see that there's a very strict narrative when it comes to these things, especially when there seems to be an agenda promoted. And again, from what I'm seeing, and correct me if I'm wrong, from what I'm seeing, there's a lot of evidence that this could have been a disgruntled student. I sometimes forget that in the West, in the Midwest, school ends about a month earlier than it does here in New York. My kids, my nieces, they've got about a month left in that school system. Although college is all graduated as well. Sometimes bad things do happen that are not premeditated, pre-planned by the government. Because let's get something straight here: the government is just people, and people do bad things. And this is one of my biggest beefs with anarchists, for instance, or libertarians that think that we can live without some form of government. Sure, we could live without some form of government. But whatever the ruling class is, they'd be people, and they'd be flawed, and they would still exert power and force, whether or not that was backed up by a government or many governments. So, to me, that's why you have to have a set of checks and balances in any kind of an institution. Because if there weren't governments, corporations, entities, if you will, that are larger than one person. Let's see. Time to ban schools. It will reduce, ban guns in schools. Ban schools, it will reduce mass shootings. Ha ha. It's tough for me to, joke around when things are so serious. But, if we're going to talk about actual solutions to these things, and obviously there's no good solutions, but we've talked about arming teachers, and people go crazy when you say to arm teachers, oh, students that get the gun, this and that. But, a lot of teachers, especially I would imagine in Texas, for instance, right, already handle firearms. And that's probably why there wasn't more loss of life, especially if there was 2 shooters here. We don't know if there were 2, but there are 2 people being detained, right? So, and only 3 injured. And somehow, again, these kids were detained and not killed themselves. So they were probably, tackled by several people. Oh my God, I want to throw up. I'm just thinking about this. It's crazy. It's the worst. Now, perhaps there could have been even less loss of life if we employed biometrics in this case to a teacher that went through a program that already had volunteered, and a hidden biometric safe either attached to his desk or a nearby wall, some renovations in the summer, where literally he puts his handprint somewhere and the safe opens up and he has access to a loaded weapon. Nobody else could have that. Is that so far-fetched? Isn't that something that could actually empower humanity and minimalize the risk and use, again, use technology to our advantage? I think that's a key thing. I think that's something that's really been overlooked in a lot of cases, and it's upsetting, to say the least. That's the big issue to me. You look at these things, and it's tough. It's tough. I don't, again, like talking about dead kids. It's very, very hard for me. Gross. How do these school shooters keep getting casually detained? Well, again, the last one, there's a lot of questions about Parkland, and you can go check out my film on DTube exclusively called Parkland Code Red, and I, have a lot of footage that does contain questionable actions, questionable witness accounts that don't necessarily go along with the regular story. But to me, again, 1 or 2 kids come in with a shotgun or a rifle in Texas, and they do cause fatalities and just a few injuries, well, that probably means bum rush. People decided they weren't going to die. And seeing as most people ran outside, again, thinking it was a fire drill, someone may have pulled the fire alarms, and that could be a copycat action from what they saw in the media during the last shooting. And we all know that the more and more this stuff is in the media, the more and more it's an encouragement to the deranged, the mentally ill, to try to replicate these attacks and make them even bigger and bigger and bigger. And, we only see them in the news when the body count is huge. Briefly in the news, we saw Vegas. There was somebody walking around with a long gun, a rifle. Nobody died there. It left the news cycle probably in less than 24 hours. And I guess they're still looking for the guy. I'm not sure what the laws are there or what he actually had. But then I look at, some of the other ridiculous things, and you got a guy in a Deadpool costume being arrested and put on the ground and detained because they think that he's going to, go shoot something up when he's on the way to go to the premiere of a comedy action movie. So many facets to the culture in the United States, the gun culture, but really I think it's more the mental illness culture. And anybody, I'm sorry, you know, I'm not saying that these people should be able to plead insanity for taking these kinds of human life, but the bottom line is that they're obviously mentally ill. It's not a question, right? How could it be a question of them being mentally ill? Anybody that would go into a room and kill children for any reason, you know, for their government, because, you know, a girl didn't like them because they didn't have friends in high school, any of this stuff, you're crazy, you're mentally ill. So, you know, let's go back to the Fox feed and see what they have to say.
Frightened and powerless. One thing you can do is go to your children's school, ask the questions. What should people be looking for as a parent? What should they be asking for at their children's school to see if it's being kept safe?
Very good. The ringing and the debate over what we do now is on again. We'll have more after this.
Oh, let's see, kind of off topic, but you're done. Can you address the situation with the Dash sponsorship? Oh yeah, I mean Dash sponsored us for a month. You know, we did our Dash giveaways for a month. We obviously upgraded our equipment a little bit. If you haven't noticed that, I'm able to triple cast pretty easily. Got a new box. You know, Luke was able to get a new camera, and we still have some Dash left, I believe, and we're trying to obviously make the best of that Dash. But they didn't end up sponsoring. You know, I think we addressed it in one of the live casts, the final live cast. They didn't take our proposal, even though we put in a pre-proposal, and Luke did everything to get the actual proposal in. But who knows? I know he's working on a separate proposal to another cryptocurrency. But perhaps you guys reach out to Dash and say, you know, we missed that you're not sponsoring We Are Change. We think they're one of the best alt-media organizations out there, the most honest, if you will, the least, I would hope, driven by an agenda other than truth. You know, and that's why I'm coming out here and saying I don't believe that this is a false flag. And you know what? If there's any of that evidence, we'll be the first to report it. But don't see it. And with that, guys, I think I'm going to wrap this stream up. I really appreciate everybody for joining me. I wish it was on better terms. I wish I was doing live streams about the North Korean peace treaty going through. That's what I want to do them on. You know, I want to do news on that, not them falling apart, not school shootings, not dead children of any kind, not protesters being sniped in Gaza. I don't love it. So, you know, I appreciate all the support out there, guys. And if there's any more breaking news concerning this, we will join you again. And thanks for joining us here at wearechange.org. And remember, be the change you want to see in the world.